Good Monday, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center, taking a look at this current temperature here across North Florida, South Georgia. You do see already getting down into the 40s in some spot. I know I'm just east of Stark, and we're already down. It looks like the 43. So definitely seeing that temperature reading falling down here this evening. As you see these numbers here, some of these from a little while ago, we're going to be seeing some freezing conditions for some spots. Some spots there some frost conditions for others. So just be aware of that as we come away from that Thanksgiving weekend now, move along toward December here as that comes up on Wednesday. So we'll just kind of be watching things in the Weather Center in terms of some of the different numbers. I know we got our first freeze where I'm at, east of Stark on Saturday actually of the season. Didn't actually have any alerts in play per se, but we're in a very rural area, and sometimes you got to be aware if you're in these rural areas that these temperatures can fall on down, and that can be an issue here as you have to deal with those for sure when you're in those isolated spots. But anyway, let's go ahead now and punch on up some of these weather alerts. We'll go ahead and switch on over right now to these weather alerts. You can see looking right now, the freeze warning in play. You saw this as we came on the air here. That's for those light blue counties, those light blue zones. So we'll be watching that for sure as we look on off toward the west. We're going to be monitoring things as temperatures of 27 to 32 degrees expected, depending on exactly where you're at. This goes from midnight tonight to 8 a.m. Tuesday as frost and freeze conditions. They can and potentially will kill crops and other sensitive vegetation. So just be aware of that danger here as we are looking ahead in toward the timeline as we are watching things in the weather picture. Let me go ahead now and pop on up another look here at some of our different things that we can show you. We'll go on over to the UF Weather Sim camera in Gainesville right now. You'll be able to see what's happening there as we pop this on off this side there. Toward Alachua County, of course, the Gators getting that win against my Seminoles on Saturday. The Noles there came back in the fourth quarter, but came up a little bit short. I know they'll be going on to a bowl game. It looks like they also have a new head coach now for the football program, Billy Napier, as we'll be continuing to watch the weather conditions down there, of course, in Alachua County. We'll continue to definitely check in here on what is happening as we go away now. From that, we'll take you on out toward Tallahassee, where they're under that freeze warning. No official advisories for Gainesville, but again, you can definitely have some rural spots drop a little bit cooler down here as we are looking. I know we're losing a few frames. That can happen from time to time here, but again, looking out toward Tallahassee, you can see the conditions look pretty nice, pretty tranquil out there. So a few things on the camera, but really not concerned about that. I think that's just some things that are kind of on that imagery right there that aren't really necessarily weather related, not raindrops or anything like that is what I mean. So definitely giving you another angle here of the weather situation. We'll go ahead and move away from that now. We are on a holiday schedule still, so I know we'll be kind of watching the weather and being on as needed, of course, but we'll monitor things. But otherwise, I'll be back here on Thursday, not expecting anything of significance until maybe next week in terms of some severe weather threat, but that's way too early to talk about as we do go ahead now and look on up toward the north here. We'll go ahead and see what's happening as we get up toward parts of Michigan right now. You can see toward Grand Rapids, they're getting quite a bit of snow right now. The rates of snow there are really getting pretty high. So Western Michigan having to do with that. I know we saw some games up there, Michigan game, the Michigan State game especially. They had quite a bit of snow there on the ground. Ann Arbor more of that flurry acts and some of that accumulating there during that game against Ohio State, where they got that big upset win. But then that Michigan State Penn State game, we really saw things that become hard to even see on the field in that contest there with some of that wintry precipitation, as you would kind of expect this time of year. I know there's a burn ban for North Carolina because they've had some issues there with some wildfires, unfortunately, breaking out there. Could use some precipitation up that way as we now bring it back on over toward the local area. And I'll go ahead and pop on up our graphics now we'll go ahead and show you a look here at a sunset from just a little while ago from where I'm at. A pretty nice view. I thought I would take a screen capture of that. So just kind of showing you how things look out there as hurricane season winding on down. Tomorrow's the last day here, folks. November 30th, of course. And I haven't had any more names since that official name list. Never had to use that alternative name list that of course, replaced the Greek alphabet. But let's go ahead now and pop on up a weather history story as we transition to more about severe weather discussions here. You can see Madison County EF1 tornado did occur as we were looking back here in weather history. 1 year ago tomorrow, we had some severe weather come on through. You could really see those, excuse me, those winds there. That velocity image really telling the story with the bright blue showing up, and then the darker blue, even 100-mile-an-hour winds. We had a tornado warning about that time, and then even that debris ball circled here. I'll kind of point this out for you guys just a little bit here. That is actually something you can see within the radar because it was so intense there that debris being lofted up, as you can see that there on correlation coefficient. Of course, that rotational signature with the winds going away from the radar and toward the radar on storm relative velocity. That was an EF1 tornado, so we were talking about winds there. In this case, it was 105 miles an hour. Moderate damage did occur. Look, maybe even a little worse on radar, but definitely a story there as we did again get that first freeze there back on Saturday where I'm at, the coldest morning since February 4th. This was recorded in a rural area, of course. I want to make sure I know that because we actually didn't see a freeze warning or a frost advisory issue, but this is a good reminder for tonight even that definitely could get pretty chilly out there in these rural spots, cooler than even what we have forecasted. Overall, I know my number is kind of an average, but I definitely could have some light freezing conditions in some North Florida areas here that aren't even under a freeze warning or frost advisory. Just always have to be aware of that. I mean, it's time of year, but as you see here, next 7 days with the rain, not expected much, but a little bit. We'll try to filter into the end of the period, and we'll watch to see if we get an uptick in some stronger storm action by then. But you can see things pretty tranquil here over the next 7 days. Cold conditions here as we look toward tomorrow, toward Wednesday, warming up some for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we start to fall back on down again once we get later on into the period. You see these highs getting a little bit lower really in nature, so definitely something to kind of monitor, something to kind of watch here as we are dealing with things in this weather situation. But I think that'll pretty much do it here for the time being. Of course, we'll be watching things, see if things ramp up next week, but not too concerned right now, of course. Let me make sure we've covered everything. Of course, we have that frost advisory as well. That's from 3 to 8 a.m. for some more zones here as we're looking toward Lake City, for instance. You saw that there on our other map, and I'll pop that map up, Lake Butler as well. So let me go ahead and show you what we're talking about here. With this, you can see that in the darker blue there, this does go over towards some other zones here as we're looking. I know I'm going to be continuing to watch precisely. It looks like going to be looking for temperatures there to be as low as maybe about 32 degrees, and that could result in some frost formation. Again, I know we lost some frames here. Don't know why we're having that issue. I've kind of done some maintenance on some things. I think there's some internet issue here, so this happens sometimes in your rural area. We'll try to have that fixed by the time we get to Ward Thursday, but otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a